Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a really troubling situation unfolding in Chillicothe, Ohio. It centers on the old Wherever aluminum facility.
Right, a plant that used to be, a major employer there.
Exactly, but now it's more like this. Well, this sobering example of what industrial pollution can do, especially in smaller towns.
A huge toxic site, basically.
Yeah, and we want to unpack how decades of what looks like corporate negligence led to this, and critically, how the cleanup plan was. Well, deeply flawed. It kind of outsourced the town's safety.
And that brings us to the crunch point, doesn't it? The paper mill right next door, Pixelle, it just announced its closing for good.
Which sounds like an economic blow, but environmentally.
It's potentially catastrophic. That mill was the only thing keeping this massive plume of toxic chemicals somewhat in check.
So now that barrier's gone.
Soon, yes. And it puts Chillicothe's health, its water infrastructure, everything in immediate danger. It really is a microcosm of a larger story we see across the U.S.
Okay, let's dig into how this poison got into the ground in the first place. It wasn't just an accident, was it?
No, not at all. It seems like it was just standard practice for decades. Careless disposal.
What kind of stuff are we talking about?
Well, multiple waste streams. You had industrial wastewater with lead and cadmium. Then there was this lead-contaminated walnut shell dust.
Walnut shell dust?
Yeah. Workers apparently thought it was just sawdust, but it was contaminated. Plus, trichloroethylene, TCE waste, and a mix of waste solvents.
And how do they dispose of it? Just dump it?
Pretty much. They had an incinerator on site for things like benzene, and they discharged waste solvents directly into a leach pit, basically letting it seep into the ground.
So when did people start realizing how bad this was?
The first real alarms went off way back in 1985. An EPA inspection flagged major concerns.
What did they find?
Paint sludge dumps, things like that. But crucially, they confirmed severe groundwater contamination, TCE, at 3,900 micrograms per liter. Benzene, vinyl chloride.
And this was in the drinking water source?
In the sole source aquifer for Chillicothe's 30,000 residents. So, the warning was unambiguous. Regulators knew early on.
Then came the 1996 remedial investigation. That must have painted an even clearer picture.
Oh, absolutely. It laid bare the shocking extent. Identified specific source areas, old sludge pits, TCE storage tanks.
And the numbers?
Damning. Lead in surface soils up to nearly 72,000 parts per million, and groundwater TCE. It hit 13,000 micrograms per liter.
13,000. What does that compare to the standard?
That's 2,600 times the current federal drinking water limit. Just staggering.
Wow. And was it staying on the wherever site?
No, that's the key. By 1996, they already knew it was migrating off-site. TCE showed up at 500 micrograms per liter in monitoring wells beyond the property line.
So it was already spreading?
Yes, and even vinyl chloride, another nasty carcinogen, was found at 12 micrograms per liter in the neighboring Pixelle mill's own industrial well. That's 6 times the working water limit right there.
Okay, let's shift to the human cost. These numbers are alarming, but what did it mean for the people working there, living nearby?
Well, the 1996 report itself pointed out an unacceptable risk just for the workers. Breathing in TCE fumes, ingesting lead and cadmium from that walnut shell dust.
You mentioned workers thought it was sawdust.
Exactly, which it just shows you the potential level of exposure. And then there's the community. Groups like Wherever Exposed have collected these heartbreaking stories.
Do you share some examples?
Sure. People like Barbara Weaver, who sadly battled multiple myeloma. Mike Hall developed lymphoma, which has known links to benzene exposure. Guy McQuaid, a lifelong athlete, developed severe COPD and passed away in 2015.
And they believe these illnesses were directly linked to the plant.
They strongly believe so, yes. It's the tragic human side of this contamination.
And didn't that 1996 risk assessment actually predict future problems for residents?
It did. It was incredibly prescient, actually. It specifically modeled the exact scenario we're seeing now, the plume shifting towards residential areas.
And it predicted health risks.
Yes, an unacceptable cancer risk for people living off-site. About 2 in 10,000 for an adult, 1 in 10,000 for a child. Double the EPA's acceptable limit for adults, and right at it for kids. It was a quantitative warning.
So they knew the contamination was bad, they knew it was spreading, and they predicted it could harm residents.
Yeah.
What was the plan to fix it? The 1998 cleanup plan.
Right. Well, it did some things.
Okay.
Address contaminated soil, some of the VOCs, the volatile organic compounds, but it had this huge fatal flaw.
It was.
It was entirely dependent on the Pixelle paper mill next door.
How?
It relied on Pixelle constantly pumping massive amounts of groundwater out of two big industrial wells, PW17 and PW18.
Ah, so the pumping created a sort of hydraulic wall, pulling the contamination towards the mill instead of letting it spread.
Exactly. Hydrodynamic control is the technical term, but it basically meant Chillicothe's environmental safety was entirely in the hands of this private company's operations. It was outsourced.
And was that even working perfectly, even with the mill pumping?
Not really, no. Monitoring data, even recent data, showed the cleanup wasn't hitting the required levels. There were still persistently high concentrations, like a TCE spike hitting 610 micrograms per liter in just recently. That's still 120 times the limit.
So a flawed plan, not even fully working, and then the big domino falls.
Precisely. April 2025, Pixelle announces it's closing permanently. Final shutdown August 10th, 2025. Huge job losses, massive economic hit, estimated at $1 billion.
And environmentally.
The pumping stops. Permanently. That hydraulic barrier provided by wells PW17 and PW18, gone.
And we know what happens when the pumping stops.
We absolutely do. There's hard evidence. Temporary reductions in Pixelle's pumping in the past between 2008 and 2013 and again 2020, 2021.
What happened then?
Each time, the toxic plume immediately started shifting undesirably southeast, directly towards residential neighborhoods and critically towards the city's wastewater treatment plant.
So the proof is already there. This isn't just theory.
Not at all. The risk they modeled back in '96 is happening right now. It's a dangerous reality unfolding as we speak.
So just to be clear, an uncontrolled plume of carcinogens is now heading towards people's homes and the city's essential infrastructure.
That's the immediate peril, yes. An untethered plume on a direct collision course. It's a crisis born from, really, decades of corporate negligence, maybe some regulatory compromises, and just ongoing inaction.
What needs to happen now? Immediately.
Howmet Aerospace, the company now responsible for the Wherever site, needs to step up now. They have to fund and implement what's called a contingent remedy, basically, a robust pump-and-treat system of their own to replace that lost hydraulic control from Pixelle. And they need to do it before that plume hits the wastewater plant.
And the regulators, the Ohio EPA.
They need to enforce this decisively. No more delays.
It's a stark situation.
Huh.
This toxic legacy isn't just history in Chillicothe. It's an active, escalating crisis right now.
Absolutely. And the fight for a safe future there, it really has implications for so many other industrial towns. It's a fight that has to be won.